All right, everybody. Welcome to our live stream talking about sole proprietorships or LLCs. I'm going to give a quick chance for anybody who is going to be joining us to hop in. This is a topic that when I was getting started in business, I had no idea the differences between the two. I had no idea what either one really truly meant. I didn't know 8 years ago, I didn't know what I needed to do. I just thought if you were going to go into business for yourself, you needed to have an LLC. I didn't understand what sole proprietorship even meant. So let's jump into sole proprietorship first. So a sole proprietor, if you decide that you're going to today start offering services, start making products, and you're going to start collecting money right now today, then you are a sole proprietor. If you start doing business right now and you just exist, you're a sole proprietor under your name, your surname. So when I got started and I started doing video production, I just operated under my name, Trent Irwin. So therefore, the moment I started to offer that service to clients and receive money, I was a sole proprietor. And this is completely legal. This is totally fine. You can do this all day long and operate like that. You don't have to file an LLC or form an LLC and file paperwork for it and pay fees. You don't have to do that. You can be a sole proprietor. And I recommend you be a sole proprietor in the very beginning. And there's no time limit for how long you can be a sole proprietor before you form an LLC. So you might want to offer, let's say, marketing services like copywriting, SEO, doing ads, doing content. You might be a photographer, photographing weddings, or just doing family sessions, or making family videos, or different things like that, where you're making money. Maybe you're a musician, anything like that, where there's not going to be immediately a lot of inherent risk. So, there's not going to be a ton of risk in you just taking some photos of a family. Where it could get more risky would potentially be within the wedding space. And let me call out a specific example. I know somebody who a couple years ago was a wedding filmmaker, and this person was actually sued because the couple ended up not being content with the deliverables that they received after the wedding was over. They said that they had maybe missed some things weren't fully covered, they weren't pleased with the outcome. So there was an instance where somebody in the same field as me in filmmaking actually got sued. And I don't remember how much it was going to need to be settled for or how much they were asking for, but I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of maybe $30,000, $25,000. So a significant amount of money, especially for somebody as a small business. And so this person had to go to court and defend themselves against this couple. So it does happen. I know somebody that's happened to, again, a couple years ago. So it does happen. So in that instance, if you were a sole proprietor and did not have an LLC, did not have a business, your personal assets, so your house, car, savings funds, all of that stuff could be in jeopardy to the person who would be suing you. So if that couple is asking for $25,000 and they win, then out of your personal assets, you would have to pay $25,000 or whatever the case may be. If you had an LLC and you were protected, again, it's limited liability. So your liability is limited. So they're not going to be able to touch your personal assets like a sole proprietor. So whatever you have in your business and whatever your business owns, that is in jeopardy, but your personal assets are not in jeopardy in that case. So I hope that part of it gives you some clarity around that situation, that you truly can get sued, but you just need to understand the inherent risk of things. Like, if you're not photographing weddings, and I mean, again, that's a one-time thing. That's a big deal for people. So if you mess it up, you could potentially, I guess, have a lawsuit on your hands if people are really upset. But if you're just doing copywriting, and as long as you're not doing anything within the copywriting, plagiarism or anything like that, you're gonna be totally fine. If you're doing search engine optimization, just providing a service and you're not doing anything crazy, you're gonna be totally fine. There's not gonna be a ton of risk within those kind of service-based businesses, and you could probably operate for a couple of years as a sole proprietor and not have to form an LLC. So at what point should you form an LLC? Um, when you start to make significant money, and especially when it becomes your main source of income. Again, you want to have an LLC because as your revenue grows, as your profits grow, that means you're taking on more business, and as you take on more business, there is more risk involved. So I've never come across myself currently a situation where I really thought I was going to be sued, really thought I was going to be in some legal issue, but you just never know. And I want to be protected because my business does six figures every year. My business does close to $300,000 in revenue. So I want to make sure and be protected. My personal self, especially having a family and having two kids, I want to be protected if something were to ever go down. So you want to form an LLC when, again, your salary, you're starting to take your entire salary from this business. You're making decent money. So that would be in the tens of thousands of dollars. You also want to form an LLC to have some additional credibility. So you can totally operate as a sole proprietor, but there may be, as you work with bigger organizations or more established organizations, they may want to work with an LLC, an actual business entity. And so you need to consider that as you're trying to grow what you're doing, grow your operations. It's just going to make sense for you to actually have an official LLC, official company doing that. So that's one of the main things. You're not going to be able to do a lot of branding within a sole proprietorship unless you file a DBA, a doing business as. And I'll have another video if you guys are interested in DBAs, doing business as. You can file as a sole proprietor a DBA to have a trade name. So again, you don't have to be branded under your own personal surname. You can have another name that you can operate and actually have a business account with that name because of the DBA. So you can do some branding there as a sole proprietor, but it is nice having an LLC to go ahead and have a name, be able to put those on contracts if you're providing services, or on a business license or different things like that. It does give you the opportunity to have more credibility. So yeah, as far as the advantages and disadvantages go, the advantages for a sole proprietorship is that you don't have to pay any fees, you don't have to file anything to go ahead and get started. Like again, right now in this moment, if you decide to do business, you can be a sole proprietor under your own surname. You don't have to file anything with the state. You don't have to file anything with the IRS. You don't have to tell anybody, any government organization. You can just go ahead and do it and start receiving money. Now, legally, if you're making a certain amount of money, I think it's over $500, $600, then you need to report that obviously on your taxes. That is the legal thing that you need to do, even as a sole proprietor, is to report your earnings on your taxes. So one of the advantages, again, you don't have to pay fees. You don't have to file anything. You can just go ahead and exist as a sole proprietor. The other advantage is it does keep taxes pretty simple for you. Just what you earn minus what it costs you, your expenses, is what you're going to get taxed on. So it's good, even if you are a sole proprietor, to keep up with your expenses, your costs, because you're going to want to report that. You're going to want to report the actual money, the actual profit that you took home, not just your entire revenue. So if you had a revenue of 40 grand, but it cost you 10 grand, to do all that, you only want to get taxed on the 30 grand. You don't want to get taxed on the full 40. So it's really good, even as a sole proprietor, to make sure that you keep track of those things. That's why it's great to, even as a sole proprietor, have a separate business account or have a separate bank account for your business operations, so that you can keep track of that in a specific place. And then at the end of the year, know where everything shakes out and know what you have to pay for taxes. Now, again, the advantages for an LLC are that you're going to be protected if you have legal issues or you end up getting sued. your personal assets are going to be protected and your business will stand on its own. That's a huge advantage. The other advantage, having credibility, being able to brand yourself in that name, be able to have contracts in that specific business name. You're just kind of more official. That doesn't mean as a sole proprietor that you can't get jobs. I got jobs with, decent size, 4-figure, maybe even some 5-figure jobs as a sole proprietor. You can totally do that. It's totally fine. But there is an advantage to having an LLC that can give you some more of that credibility. So as you're starting out, I think it's really important for you to consider. You don't need to go ahead and race out there and I need to go form an LLC, because I know here in the state of Tennessee, for me to form an LLC, it's going to cost you about $350 every single year to have that LLC. There's going to be other fees associated with keeping that running. You're going to have to file annual reports, and that costs money as well. So there's just things that you're going to have to do that are going to cost money. And if it's not really an advantage to you, or you're not a big enough operation, it doesn't really make sense for you to do that right away. So I wouldn't rush out and go and do that. Like, hey, I'm going to start this business. This is what I'm going to do. I need to go get an LLC to make it happen. Not true. You can go ahead and start as a sole proprietor. And I recommend doing so for at least the first 6 months to a year and really get your feet up underneath. Because who knows, maybe you get 6 months into it, you don't like it, you're not making a lot of money. Therefore, you don't want to have wasted a lot of money on filing and forming and keeping up with an LLC. So go ahead and get your feet underneath you, start making decent money. When you get to the point where you're pulling a lot of money, maybe your entire salary from that business, you need to protect yourself by forming that LLC. Let's see if there are any specific questions. If you all have questions after this live stream is over, make sure you drop them below. I would love to take some of those questions and turn those into an entire separate live stream or separate video. I just want to help you all understand. Again, I've been in business for 8 years now. I graduated college 2014. Left and did marketing services, SEO, PPC. I did that for a couple of years. And then I was really passionate about filmmaking, video production, photography, got into that. And now that is the business that I have and love doing. But when I was starting out in business, I was so confused on these kinds of things. I had no idea. It seemed way over my head. But as I learned and grew and understood and had more conversations with people, the more it started to make sense. So I want to make sense of it for you, so that if you're starting out in business, that you don't have to be left feeling like you have no idea what's going on. But from the very get-go, you can get clarity around starting a business. So hope that answers your questions on whether you need to go out and form an LLC or if you can just operate totally fine as a sole proprietor right now. I think for most of you watching, you can operate as a sole proprietor just fine and not have to form an official LLC for at least a couple of months or a year, depending on how long it takes for you to kind of really get established. So go out there, enjoy your business, work hard, have fun. And again, if you guys have questions that you want answered in the future, please drop those below. And I'll see you all in the next one.